Richard, over to you.
Thanks, James. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Richard Clark and I am the Group Executive for Events at Tourism Events Queensland. So my portfolio spans major events, our destination events program and business events. So the value of events, one of my KPIs is to grow a events calendar worth $2 billion for Queensland for 2032. So I'm going to be taking a lot of notes from this session. It's going to be very helpful for me. But really privileged to have a panel of experts here to share their really diverse experience and knowledge on this, because what is the value of events? Like, we all know the immediate impacts, the economic returns, the visitation, but events drive so much more. They drive infrastructure development. They can be the solution for problems. They can drive workforce acquisition. In the business event space, they can drive genuine, groundbreaking innovation. They can drive community connection with our unique Indigenous cultures. It's a lot more deeper than what we probably look at in terms of the basic measures of economic value and visitation. And we're going to hear a lot of that from our panel today. So I'm going to throw over straight away to Alison, who is an icon of the business events community. And Alison is going to do a deep dive into those wider benefits that the conference market, convention market, and the general business event sector deliver.
Thank you. If it's okay, I'm just going to stand up and move over into the middle. So as we move through, I have the honour today of representing within the business event section, particularly chatting to you about conferences and trade exhibitions, which is my deep love. And you've heard a lot of words already this morning about collaboration and cooperation, etc. And I love this sector because of what it can do for us in that space. So just moving through. A lot of people are really familiar with the layers of our visitor economy, major events, leisure. This is the one that I love the most. And within this, there's sort of three chunks of this subsector. Corporate meetings, incentives, which are those fabulous high-end travel reward programs that corporates do, and then the conferences and exhibition space. And that's specifically the area that we'll chat through. So I love a good diagram, and this is one of my favorite. I did make it myself, as you can probably tell. But again, back to what Anthony and I both love, that term, secret sauce. With conferences, it is that R&D innovation, the education, it's that industry strategy, and that's what we're just going to sort of work through a little bit more that makes it special as a layer. So why conferences? So on the money side of things, for all of us in the room, it's reliable economic impact. And when I say that, what I mean is they're high spending. They're often being paid to attend these events. Monday to Thursday business, which is fabulous. And so complementary then with obviously the other layers of our visitor economy. Those lovely dollars get spread around a lot. This group does entertain a lot. They will take their clients out to restaurants. They will spend hard, and they're often taking gifts home and things, and they do tend to stay on. But what we know from the data is that they tend to, every time they come to that destination, want to go back. And obviously that drives demand into the other layers. And then beautifully, a lot of them want to come back, not just for visiting family and friends, but for leisure, take a holiday, etc. And that's why we're very blessed in Queensland to have so many destinations with the right infrastructure right up the coast, from the Gold Coast up to Cairns. And we go hard on this business. But the why else that I have to say is what's kept me in this sector. And it is back to this bit, the secret sauce, as Anthony also calls it, of actually who these events bring together. So when you look at who's running these, it's peak bodies and industry associations. And this is really quite interesting in the sense that if corporates are having conferences, all it takes is a change in their corporate strategy or geopolitical changes, and suddenly that event's not happening anymore. But back to the reliable piece, industry peak bodies and associations have to run their conferences in order to explore best practice, innovation in that particular industry sector. And so this is where it dovetails right into these areas. So just some examples. Because they don't sound that sexy, do they, peak bodies and associations. But when you actually think then about innovation, best practice, bringing global trends into Australia, et cetera, when you think of surgeons, what they do for us, pretty important. Water and our precious use of that resource, pretty important. Tunnelling, I think Brisbane's very aware that we've got Cross River Rail and we love a good tunnel. And then vaccines. I mean, Australia is just so strong in this. And big is not always beautiful, as you'll see. It's not about size, it's actually about that innovation. So when you look at the mix in most cities, it tends to be 80-20 national to international. Sorry, I'm not doing this very well. But the bread and butter is the key point. National conferences are the ones they have to meet, and they underpin in all the destinations where we're focusing on that market, coming back again. Now, in actual fact, there's probably only about just over 1,600 conferences that we track and chase constantly. So it's a very targeted, specific market. And then internationally, it's the same. But the reason that it's also only 20% international is they're really hard to get. The internationals take a long time. They're probably complex, more complex to actually secure, and they take a lot more money as well. So on that space, this is why you'll see we love the nationals, but it is a bit of a dark art getting these internationals in, and there's a reason for that. You can't just put your hand up and say, hey, it's beautiful, we're Brisbane, we're Cairns, we're the Gold Coast, we've got a fabulous centre, come and hang with us. You actually have to persuade the peak body to bid to their international peak body. So it's exactly what you saw happen with the Olympics. So in our case, trying to get them to come and bid with us instead of Sydney, Melbourne, Cairns, Adelaide, Darwin. And then, once you've won that fight, or battle, we have to actually do the bid against the other cities as well. And so it can be a long process, but we do think it's worth it. So it is a bit like, for all of us, destinations and centres and the teams, because we do all hunt in packs with our bureaus and TEQ. It is a little bit like bidding for the Olympics every day with a tiny, 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 tiny budget. But here's some examples, and this is obviously from BCEC's perspective. And again, think back to those sectors, think back to those areas of innovation. And you can see, this is just in the last year and looking ahead, just how important those things are actually to underpin the innovation in our state, particularly in Queensland. We've got everything. And our universities are so good, so good. And so this is one that's on foot at the moment, talking of long. We've been working on this for over a decade. We're going to get the opportunity to bid early next year. Richard's my good friend here, helping us with Sandra Pissarro and the TEQ team and TA. But we will have a shootout against WA and South Australia first. And you can see it's a big one. But again, think back to our future. World Energy Congress, it's the entire energy transition, from the lovely, lovely coal that we still need, right through to the renewables, wind, solar, water, etc. And also importantly for Queensland, community transition as well. And this just very quickly is what was mentioned earlier, Gardasil. You're all familiar. But if you look at that, the lovely Ian Fraser, fellow Scot, that was his co-inventor, Jian Shu. They look about 12 there. I think they were actually in their early 30s. This is Ian now. And this is Gardasil. So they were the co-creators of this. It was the first cancer vaccine, as Anthony mentioned. And they met at a conference. So this is exactly the power, and also why you want that balance of nationals and internationals happening in your major cities. So just quickly on that future focus and how we're applying that, forgive some of the images, but we think of Queensland in this 2032 as a case study in action, because when you look at the problems we have, transitioning out of fossil fuels, et cetera, environmental issues, we actually have all the global challenges, but we do have world-leading expertise in all of the areas that are needed to actually save the world, as I think of it. So we are, and many of our colleagues in Gold Coast, Cairns, and across the coast, all focusing on attracting conferences, both national and international, in these sectors as part of playing our role in that legacy and achieving the potential. hence back. And so really our goal is, you can see there, to increase even more that impact. The economic impact's going to come anyway, but it's really about increasing that output that will drive the innovation in our state. So realizing that potential is the challenge over the next 8 years. And we've talked about collaboration again. For us, it's new muscles. It's not starting collaboration, it's doing it a bit differently, and happy to chat about that further. So I'm going to end there. I've got 30 seconds. But this is really my big message. I think we need to love all of our visitor economy layers. And so when you see a lanyard, just like we're talking about the future here, you know, smile when you see one, because that is high spend and innovation happening right there in your town. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Great insights, and framing business events as playing their part in saving the world is a great perspective on the value that sector provides. Next, we got Stuart Field, who's the co-owner of Oztix, one of Australia's largest independent ticketing companies. Stu's extensive experience in event management and ticketing will shed light on the value of regional events and the unique challenges they face, particularly in today's rapidly evolving event landscape. Thanks, Stu.
Thanks, Richard. In case those sausage rolls are weighing you down, you didn't get to the coffee, I thought I'd start off with a bit of video and bring some music and life and colour into the room today. So that can probably sell Oztix a bit better than I can by talking to you. But our key brands, Oztix and Localtix, which were acquired 2 years ago, and Localtix has really brought a focus to us for regional events. We have a whole bunch of destination marketplaces, Cairns Tickets, Townsville Tickets, all around Queensland, and that's really helping us to help promote and show the value of regional events. And that's what I'm here to talk to you today. The value, we've got cultural, economic and livability events. So really from the cultural benefits, it's all around how you can bring the community together to break the day-to-day routine for people and also create shared experiences. Events are all about experiences and how people come, feel and walk away with a really positive mindset. And it's also about developing artists, performers and lots of other local people that can get out and show their creativity. And from an economic perspective, new money coming into the town or your surrounding region. So it's not just around the actual money, the event, it's around what that brings on the way there or for the surrounding businesses, creates jobs, develops skills, but also all the cafes, the restaurants, the tour operators, everything around an event can benefit from an event. And from the livability and marketing perspective, it can really show and put your town on the map. You know, so events bring people and create families and create experiences that make people love their town and love their region and feel like they're really a part of it. And also, it can highlight proactive councils and tourism organisations to really showcase their region. So if we look at a couple of case studies here, the Big Red Bash, and I think the important message here is that from little things, big things can grow. Big Red Bash was started with a boom box and a bunch of people in Birdsville, and it's grown to become one of the biggest events in Queensland and one of the most well-renowned. And so while this year it's having a year off, knowing Greg, he's going to be back bigger than ever, but I think what it's going to highlight this year is just how much the economic impact of an event like that can make, and not just in Birdsville, but all surrounding areas. And this is a heat map that shows where everyone comes from to visit the Big Red Bash. So it just shows that people from all around the country can come. And obviously this is a unique event, but your event can have nationwide appeal and can bring people from everywhere around the country. And secondly, Rocky Nats, one in Rockhampton, which is a council-owned and run event that's been going for a few years now. And really 46,000 visitor nights. You know, Robbie will touch on this a bit more in his presentation, but that's not just the event, but it's showing the economic impact around the event. And again, even an event like that, people come from all over the country, and it really shows that, you know, median distance 396 kilometres people will travel for that right event. And so all of these events started from nothing, started from very small, and they grew. And so next, talking about some of the challenges and opportunities for regional events. So first of all, rising production costs. So this is a really major issue. Since COVID, we've seen freight, suppliers, wages, a lot of costs go up, and really that's something that we can't control. But the opportunity there is to partner and look at shared resources. So look at areas where you can actually combine and costs and limit that with combining with other people. So I run the Good Things Festival in Melbourne at Flemington Racecourse. We share a site with 4 other events, and it actually saves us, our site budget is down to about 60% of what it would cost just by bringing other events into the region. And also you've got the audience there. So you've got the people there and you can cross-sell them into other events. And funding and sponsorship, it's also looking at, you know, how you can get people in and showcase that event. And I guess Robbie's data will really show this, but this is the power of data helps with sponsorship. Once you've got the data and the numbers, that helps you get sponsors and also helps you get out and promote the event. From a people perspective, that is one of the biggest challenges, the skills shortage in event. We lost a lot of people through COVID. A lot of people moved on into other industries. So bringing people in from in the regions and making sure if you've got a regional event, support your local people. You know, get those people, upskill those people, because then you're putting more money into the local area. And lastly, weather. I missed the slide here, but anyone who was in Brisbane last night really understands the impact that weather can have on events. Myself in Sydney last year, Centennial Park, we had to evacuate 30,000 people from the event. And not so much rain, but lightning is your biggest challenge there. There's a lot of regulations. Lightning within 10 kilometres, everyone's got to seek shelter. I was supposed to be down at the Pearl Jam concert last night, but I gave that up to come and talk to you and be at the dinner last night. But that one also got delayed because of lightning. So it's a big factor. It's a big challenge in running events. And then, so what can help this? Obviously ticketing. So if people have bought pre-sale tickets to your event, then they've put their money down. You're not relying on the door sales and people to walk up, people to arrive at your event. You've got that money in the bank, but also you can communicate with them. You can tell them what's happening. A big thing at the event at River Stage last night was telling them, don't come into the event yet. Wait, come in once the storm's happened, and that'll save people from just going home and not turning up at the event at all. And then pricing tiers and marketing. So having those sort of triggers that helps people buy your ticket and tell them if you don't buy yet, your price is going to go up, so get in now. And it can really help your marketing campaigns to trigger people and incentivize them to buy well before the event. And always make sure that when you're running your event, your price on the door is more than what it is as a pre-sale. Because if you do that, there's the incentive there for people to buy beforehand. So just the last couple of quick stats. I think I'm managing to be on time. So festivals are still a rite of passage. So 75% of event goers think festivals are a rite of passage for young people. That's how I got into the industry myself, from doing work experience at a festival. And if you get people in at the bottom, they will become the future event goers in future generations. The Big Day Out, Stereosonic, Soundwave, these are all major music festivals that I worked on back in the day. They're not there anymore, but it's cyclical, and we're seeing that now where some events have gone, but there's new ones, and that's really where there's the opportunity as we work towards 2032. We're in the build and focus stage, and so really it's the opportunity for you to build your events, create something that can capitalise on all the people that are coming into the country for the Olympics in the lead up to and beyond 2032. Thank you.
Thanks, Stu. Really highlighting the importance of those regional events, and we're seeing how much pressure some of our regional events are on, so some great insights, thank you. Now I'm going to bring in Robbie Dalton, founder of Localis, who's going to provide insights into how real-time data can transform the way we understand and maximise the economic impact of events. Robbie will share how the newly launched QTIC and Localis Tourism Data Portal offers a groundbreaking tool for tourism operators to capture valuable insights, make data-driven business decisions.
Awesome, thank you. I'm told I talk very quickly, so I'll try and slow down. Although watching Trish this morning, I definitely don't talk as fast as Trish talks. So as mentioned, my name is Robbie Dalton and I'm the founder of a Queensland-based analytics company called Localis. We specialise in tourism and travel, so we don't just do retail on the side. Everything that we do is geared around tourism and travel. Currently, we've got about 250 local governments, RTOs and operators as clients, and all three stakeholders want one major thing from us. They want to understand the value of events. And the reason why they come to Localis is Localis understands that there is no one data set that can do everything. There are lots of holes with different data sets, but bringing all different data sets together and trying to triangulate them together will tell people what's actually the ground truth about what's happening, right? And more than data, we actually make it very easy for non-data science people to understand what's going on and to take action on the data, which is key in the tourism and travel sphere. Recently, we won an Advanced Queensland grant, and that grant is specifically geared around bringing event-level data and event-level understanding to tourism operators in Queensland. So we thought we'd give you guys insight into that tool. This is our process. So the first thing that we have to do is we have to analyze historical demand, and we do this at scale. What you're looking at here is, graph. I'm a graph guy, sorry. The bottom axis here is going back to the start of 2023, and it takes you up to 2024. That squiggly yellow line is accommodation demand, and this is specifically for Noosa. The higher that squiggly line goes, the more demand that there is and the more people that there are visiting. We want to understand what drives the squiggly line to go up or to go down. So then we start overlaying events. We overlay stuff that's obvious to begin with. Obviously, school holidays in the red here will drive people to visit a particular area, but the magnitude of how much that goes up does change depending on economic factors, competition, etc. We then add in stuff like weather. And because we're in Queensland, weather affects us in different ways. As just mentioned, tropical North Queensland with cyclones, even Noosa. This particular example is, classic Higgins. The world is ending. There's a rain bomb on the way. Everyone evacuate to the highest point. This rain bomb didn't eventuate. But what did happen was a massive drop in occupancy because people from Brisbane just didn't go that weekend. Huge drop in occupancy. This was quickly followed by the triathlon, which does obviously lead to a massive increase in demand. Now, this is a very reductionist way to explain what's going on. We do this for every single suburb in Queensland, and we look at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of signals to try and figure out what's going on. Our first client was Outback Queensland, so I wanted to bring this up as a great example. Next year, it's taking a break, and we wanted to understand what does this mean for the operators and what does this mean for the other areas, and Stu touched on this before as well. The squiggly line's back. Far Central West is a gigantic area that encapsulates Birdsville, and what you're looking at here is that giant spike is spending from visitors in the Far Central West areas. 30%, so 30 cents out of every dollar that's spent in this regional area is spent within 7 days of the Big Red Bash. And this event is not happening next year. Yes, it's not good. So Stu brought up an amazing slide before, which was where are the tickets sold and where are people coming from? Anecdotally and logically, we understand, right, that people will travel there and there will be an uptick in people visiting. So we want to look at Quilpie, and the reason why we want to look at Quilpie is A, it's small, there's 400 people in Quilpie, but because if you put into Google Maps, anywhere from Byron up to the Sunshine Coast, it will route you through Quilpie to get to the Big Red Bash. So what happens in Quilpie? Well, you also see a massive spike. The biggest spikes in Quilpie happen in an event that happens 625 kilometres away. And when does it happen? Well, you've got the pre-Big Red Bash, when people are on their way to Big Red Bash and they go through there. You see a huge dip while people are at the Big Red Bash, and then after the Big Red Bash, they come back through Quilpie and spend again. So if you are an operator in in Quilpie, this is the major event that you need to focus on, and it's not happening next year. This is another really cool example that we like to look at, and I love going to dinners. I mean, everyone's here now, so I've got, cats out of the bag. We asked people, what do you think drove the biggest spike in international spend in Brisbane, where we are right now? Not Brisbane, the whole place, but Brisbane, the SA2 city. There's a one gigantic spike there, and I can hear someone probably say, maybe it's a huge international event, so I want to yell it out. Don't worry about it. Magic Round, not the biggest. Magic Round's the biggest event that Brisbane has, full stop. Domestically, it's by far the biggest, but it's not Magic Round. Is it? FIFA? No, it's not FIFA. Now, when we did this, and we're trawling through the data, we're like, I don't understand what's going on. Could this be an error with the data? We then had a look at card holders, and we realized that there was a gigantic spike in card holders from America. And then we did some Googling, and we actually found there was a warship that came to town. There was no spike in accommodation, so that didn't get picked up in accommodation, but the USS New Orleans came to town and they spent like drunken sailors. The first night, gigantic spikes in bars, restaurants, huge spikes off the scale. The next day, what do they spend on? Fast food. Retail, huge spikes. But this is something that's out of sight and something that we didn't really expect either. 216% increase in daily spend, higher than what it usually is. But why are we doing this? Why are we looking back and looking at all this data? The reason why we're doing that is to look to the future. And I made these slides a week ago, so I didn't realize this was the theme of the conference. This is what we do anyway. Everyone who knows Localis knows that we've already got future-focused data. We already use future occupancy and future flights a lot on a day-to-day. What we're adding to the mix that's getting released in December is future-facing event data, right? This is something that's going to be updated on a weekly basis, and it's going to have stuff like event spend, predicted event spend, and predicted event attendance for every place in Queensland. But more importantly, this is what it's going to look like. It's going to be related to you. The reason why it's going to be related to the operator at a category level is because what drives overnight visitation might be really different to what drives restaurants and drives bars as well. There is a very strong need to have a differentiation between the two and to split them out. So when you log in to this platform, you'll be able to see your category, which is great, what's coming up in the next 7 days and events. But a unique feature here is the insight feed. When you log in, you give this machine information, you go, I'm a small bar or a small restaurant within this area. It will then make recommendations to you about how to optimize staff or inventory on how to capture demand based on what it knows about you and historically what's happened in this area. This particular example is there's a Travis Scott concert coming up. It knows that this person's a bar in Brisbane, and it knows that concerts traditionally have a huge impact on bars in Brisbane. This is, again, lots of different features, but if you are interested in knowing more, we're looking for people to come up and help us design the product better. We're releasing in December, so either come outside and speak to us. We have an amazing Magic Round report outside if you want to come have a look. Otherwise, come find me. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Robbie. Just, again, more insight into just how important it is to understand the data, to understand the true value of events, and it sounds like we need to attract more warships to Brisbane. Next up, we have Simon Irwin, who's the CEO of Beef Australia, who's going to discuss the economic benefits and also the community impact of hosting a major regional event such as Beef Week, with a focus on the record-breaking success and its immense value to regional Queensland. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen. It's a bit hard to do this without sounding like you're making really bad puns, but I'd now like to put a bit of meat on the bones, flesh it out, explain to you the stakes that we have going with beef up in Rockhampton. Yeah, come on. Bear with me. Beef started in 1988. It was an offshoot of the bicentennial celebrations in Australia and also inspired by Expo 88. So Rockhampton being Australia's beef capital, it seemed a very natural place to have a celebration of the beef industry as it was in those days. Now, since then, it has really grown out, and the decision was taken to take it from a very narrow beef industry event to a beef community event. And the beef community includes everybody who breeds it, eats it, shifts it, processes it, sells it, whatever. So it is a week-long festival of beef. And it has become the biggest event of its type in the Southern Hemisphere. So I'd just like to run over, I shall blind you with some statistics now for a bit, and you can see them behind me. But within our event, 276 individual ticketed events. At those events, we serve 12,500 meals, which is 37 tonnes of prime Australian beef. We have 34 food vendors, over 600 trade shows, we have 65 seminars, we have 300 free events, including 35 entertainment acts across 4 stages across the week. We had over 2,000 international visitors last event, just over in May, and we also had around 40 politicians, from the Prime Minister to the Leader of the Opposition to the Premier to the Leader of the Opposition, who's actually now the Premier. So it has become a real destination in itself. The event is actually held in the middle of Rockhampton, and that's a 17-hectare site, not counting the car park. So there's a fair bit going on, and most of all those buildings you see there are actually built. We are the biggest build of its kind of temporary infrastructure in Australia. You would normally think that would be Avalon or Flemington on Cup Week, but no, more tents. And when I say tents, they're reasonably flash tents, they're air conditioned, and they're all those sorts of things. The biggest in Australia, and we're kind of proud of that. Why do we do it? Well, for a start, it puts about $102 million into the Rockhampton economy, and you can, puts a whole heap of stuff into that. We do 160,000 visitor nights, 110,000 of which are in Rockhampton. So that's a pretty big event in anybody's language. So you can see the interstate visitors we get, the intrastate. So all roads lead to beef. We work quite hard at promoting it around the world. We think for our sponsors, and they include state and federal governments and local councils, we really want to get the word out there. So we put a fair bit of work into getting the message out around the world. Now, the most amazing stat I will put up here today is actually in the top left-hand corner. Like, I'm an old media dude, and when it came back with our potential editorial reach as being over 4 billion people, I said to Imogen, go and get Meltwater to check it again. That's ridiculous. But it's actually right. We actually managed to put our message in front of a potential half the world's population. Dr. Google tells me there's 1.6 billion English speakers. So that gives you an idea of the reach and interest that is in the event itself. The thing that holds us back, like everywhere, regional events give you authenticity. It wouldn't be beef if it wasn't in Rockhampton, but accommodation kills us. So what we did this year is have what we call Beef TV, and this is just a couple of clips from there. We built a full TV studio. It was a proper job. We had Andrea Carruthers as the host of it. We had everybody came through. That gave us a reach. Another 80,000 people watched that during the week. And that is ongoing because we now have it available on our website where you can go back in and relive it. So this is what we have to do to get over. The place is booked out now. If you try and book in Rockhampton in early May 2027, you'll have the hardest time of your life. We look at flying people from Toowoomba. We look at bringing people from all around. And that is one of our challenges, is how do we continue to grow when we are landlocked, accommodation locked, and just have to work so hard at alternate ways of doing it. So we're looking at, for the future, doing day trips from Toowoomba or Townsville or Brisbane. So with international visitors, we can show them a feedlot, take them on a property tour around Toowoomba, fly them up to Beef for the day, take them back that night. That's what it's come to. But if anybody would like to build a large hotel up there, we'd love to give you a letter of support. And for as many as possible, do try and come up. We'll figure out all of the staff. We've got spare bedrooms somewhere. So please give us a yell and we'd love to see you there. Thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Such an incredible event and so valuable for both Rockhampton but for Queensland. I'm going to get into some questions now, and Simon, I'll stay with you if that's okay. Just, you highlighted some of the limitations of growing an event, like a hugely successful event, but how do you grow it? So you talked to some of your plans there, but how do you see the event growing and what does it look like in 5 years?
One of the issues we have in regional areas is the facilities that we put them in are largely old tin sheds that are end of life. And so when you come up for the event and we've put a false front on them and air condition them and there's full of light and excitement, you tend not to realise just how rubbish a lot of that is. And that is why we are the biggest build of temporary infrastructure. And one of the problems is that our council, like everybody else, is struggling for every dollar. They're building pipelines and sewage treatment plants. So for a triennial festival, to say we actually really need you to spend 200 million on doing this up into something that is worthy of the name is very, very difficult. But as I said before, the authenticity from having it in Rockhampton, people who've been to Rocky, you drive in, there's statues of bulls in the middle of roundabouts, and it's. I know the Norman Hotel says they're Brisbane's worst vegetarian restaurant. Beef Australia is Australia's worst vegan festival. Like it is. If you've never had the meat sweats, come up and have spend some time with us.
Thank you. Stu, Oztix collects a lot of data on people buying events, and we're seeing a lot of events under a lot of pressure from ticket sales. Or events like Splendour cancel after 2 weeks from poor early ticket sales. You've seen those like global artists, their whole ticketing model changed too. They're almost retail now. They set up a shop and the customer must come to them. What are the trends you're seeing with ticket purchases and who are buying them? How much has it changed?
I think probably the biggest change we've seen is ticket purchases coming later during COVID because of all the cancellations. We're seeing people hold off later and later, and that's one of the biggest challenges that there is, because as an event organizer you can't plan for your numbers, and if you think you're going to get 1,000 people and 2,000 people come in the last days, you can't get the infrastructure, you don't have enough toilets, your food vendors run out, and then your event experience is impacted. So I think, as I touched on earlier, the opportunity is to try and educate consumers to buy earlier and use those price rises or some trigger points or some marketing smarts to try and educate them to come earlier and not rely on that last minute. And I think the other one would be resale is obviously becoming a bigger thing. It's massive over in the States, and we're seeing that now, and we've definitely seen in our event Good Things, it actually cost us about 150 grand last year, people buying cheaper tickets from resale sites in the last week of the show. And having that offering where people think they can get a cheaper ticket at the last minute is not helping the value of events, and it's sort of diminishing that value.
Which again all speaks to the data, right? And so, Robbie, your data platform, that was amazing, like the insights you shared. So we've got a lot of tourism operators and event deliverers in this room. How can they get access to that data? How can they use that to empower some of their decision making?
Well, I think the reason why we got into this relationship with QTIC, which I'll kind of explain, is in 2021, 2022, it was really easy to capture demand and people weren't worried about data at all. Everyone was like, no, we're sweet, we've got this sorted. Come to 23, 24, their demand's massively softening and people need to understand the trends that are going on with data. So we formed a relationship with QTIC about 12 months ago. We've been working with them on building the snapshots, and anyone who's a QTIC member will get access to a free monthly report that gets delivered to your inbox, which has all the major touchstones that you need for the month. Apart from that, outside of that, if you were like, I want to go deeper on this, double click on this, you can either come to us direct or go to QTIC and we can work together to basically help you guys out and build something that you might need.
Fantastic. So, Alison, you mentioned the importance of international conferences and connecting Australian leading innovators with those around the world. Are there any recent examples that you can give us around how those conferences have been leveraged to drive sector innovations and what some of those benefits are beyond the obvious ones?
Yeah, I think the HIV Science Conference, which was in July last year, was probably a really good example where part of the legacy of that event was actually changing legislation in Queensland. And that was the plan from when it was first secured for Brisbane. That planning period was to actually use that, and it was to play a part in making life easier and safer for an important part in our social fabric, which is sex workers. And whatever anybody feels about it, they were unprotected. So that was a fairly significant piece of legislation from the last government. The other thing they did on a lighter level was they actually connected artists with HIV with leading scientists with HIV, and then they did an exhibit in Brisbane at Metro Arts over that period, and then auctioned it off and used that for student scholarships into the future. So there's sort of little levels and then the big stuff. And probably the other one worth mentioning, we've talked about, and Andrew's talked about, we need our coal, we need all our sources of energy until we get a smoother kind of flow or transition. And so the World Mining Congress, which everybody goes, oh, mining, awful, awful. Well, actually CSIRO used that to kickstart with UQ in particular, because Southeast Queensland, if you don't know, is actually the R&D hub globally of resources, particularly metalliferous and coal. And so they used it to entirely kickstart net zero mining direction on their investment, their research, etc. And that is going to take us through. And then again, on that smaller level, some of the profits from the conference were then used to provide Sustainable Mineral Institute at UQ with scholarships and bursaries and more funds for PhDs. So again, you can see it's seeding the future.
It's just great examples of how the benefits and that value of events is just so much more than the obvious economic and visitation benefits. So just to finish the panel off today, I'm just going to ask each of you for your thoughts on what's the one thing that the Queensland events industry should focus on. If we're thinking about the 20-year tourism plan and events part to play in that, what's the one thing that you would suggest that the events industry should focus on? I'll kick it off and I'll borrow from Anthony Ryan's theme of collaboration earlier. Mine's Team Queensland, that it's a combined approach, that I think the real strength of Queensland is its diversity and harnessing that together. And if we can do that over the next 20 years, we can actually make huge impact in the event space. Go to you, Alison.
I'm not good at one word, but for me, it's similar, but it's like, let's love every layer of our visitor economy. We need all of them. That's our opportunities to optimize all of those on the way through to 2032 and beyond. So it's let's love all of it and have strategies in place for every layer.
Stu?
I'd say collaboration. Oztix's tagline's built on partnerships. Don't think you've got to do it yourself. You can work and collaborate with others to deliver great things.
All a good word to taking. So shocked the data guy is going to say data. No, the reason why I bring that up is that this level of data and insights about what drives the economic impacts or even sentiment changes hasn't really existed to everyday operators and event people before. So while it's part collaboration, if people make the most of this data, they get better results.
Yeah, for us, I think it's the collaboration. As I mentioned before, we need people to get the idea that just because it's in Rockhampton doesn't mean part of it can't be in Toowoomba, part of it can't be in Longreach, part of it can't be in Townsville. And in order to do that, the thing that we need is connectivity between them, and certainly flight capacity in and out of Rockhampton is an issue as they are there, and we also have limited connection north, we've got good connection south, and we have no connection west. So I think that connectivity for the overall growth of our tourism industry, that would be our wish probably.
Right, so some really clear themes coming there around collaboration, connectivity and data-driven decision making. I want to thank you all, Alison, Stu, Robbie, Simon, for your contribution today. If you do want to ask questions of any of these, you can do that through the app, so remember to do that. But if you could all thank our panellists for their contribution. Thank you.